you so much for joining me here at my Trex webinar. I'm so excited to introduce you here, Nuha. So Nuha is a junior at Rice University, majoring in health sciences and minoring in business. And over the past few summers, she's gained some incredible experience. First internship was at the Dallas Cowboys,
Yeah.
and as project management intern, right?
Mhm.
And then you had most recently, and this is what I saw on your LinkedIn, you were at Amgen and you worked on the representation of clinical trials.
Mhm.
So that's pretty neat. And then you also host a podcast, so you're a fellow podcaster, called The Hidden Bias, where you interview people to highlight the implicit and explicit biases they face in personal and professional journeys.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today, Nuha.
Oh.
And right before we started this call, I told you a little bit about MyTrex. So MyTrex is a platform that's focused on helping high school students figure out what career path they should choose, and we help them throughout the entire journey from understanding their strengths, guiding them on which major, what area they should focus on, and then helping them through the application process, which you went through about almost 3 years ago.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so to get started, Nuha, tell me, if somebody's going to listen to this conversation, the people that are listening right now, why should they listen to this? What are they going to get out of this conversation?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure getting to be here and kind of talk a little bit more about my experiences and the different ways that I entered the college application process. As to your question, I would say I don't want to give just a generic answer of just, I think it should be for high school students or for people or parents. I think if I was really to delve deeper into that answer or answer to your question, it would be a lot more about I want to get people or get listeners who are able to who are questioning what they are thinking of in terms of college, what they want to do in their careers, and what is the best way to present themselves on a college application. I think even when I was a junior, I was struggling on what it meant to be part of the college application process and who I wanted to present myself as. And I was scared of what they wanted me to see versus what I thought they wanted me to see, if that makes sense. And so I really think that this webinar should be for people who are really interested in learning more about themselves and how they can apply that to the application process overall.
Okay, sounds great. So to start with, what drew you towards health sciences? Because I'm guessing you decided what you wanted to study and then you figured out what college you wanted to go to.
Yeah. So just as a quick backtrack, for Rice specifically, just as a plug for Rice, we get to choose our major in our sophomore year. But when we still apply for the process, we still have to come in wanting to have a certain interest or certain thing that we're interested in terms of their majors. And so I initially clicked biosciences as my major or my interested major for the college application process because I wanted to be a veterinarian initially. That was my very first notion of what I wanted my career to look like. And that was just something that I'd always been interested in. Medicine always interested me. Biology and not necessarily chemistry, but biology always interested in me. And so I just thought that would be the perfect route based on kind of the things that I had done academically and how it fit into a possible career path. And so moving into your question about what health sciences was for me, as I got into college, I started to realize that being a veterinarian was not what I wanted to do. I started taking the classes, I took Gen Chem, everything. And although I did well in the classes, it wasn't necessarily something that I could see myself doing for the next 10 years. And so it made me realize that I needed to figure out what I kind of wanted to do with my life. And that was a lot of what college was a big question for me of how I was going to utilize like the next 3 or 4 years to get to somewhere that I wanted to be in terms of a job, in terms of a master's degree and things like that. And so I knew that I was still interested in public health and just health overall. And I wanted to impact it in a way that felt right for my skill set and felt right for who I was as a person and who I was growing into. And so going to the health science route was something that really impacted the way that I understood how I could impact patients just on a different level. So health sciences and accompaniment with the minor in business really helps me merge both the healthcare industry and the business aspects that I really found and interested in and a passion in being in college. And yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to major in it from then.
So let me step back. So you wanted to go in basically sciences and healthcare,
Mhm.
and Rice has, like, they require you to make a decision your sophomore year, but you can come with some kind of a interest in an area that you want to go into.
Yes.
And then you decided to change from going into the traditional practitioner or medical route
Mhm.
into more of this because you were interested in a different type of an impact, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
Okay.
100%. I feel like I was never really able to let go of the medicine aspect. I knew even now I still take classes to really get to understand the role of a practitioner and the role of medicine in for both a patient and for a doctor, because I think it's, especially coming from a business perspective, I think it's really important to understand both sides and kind of how that impacts the industry overall, specifically because there are so many players from health. I'm going into this a little bit, but there's health insurance and the actual hospital administration, and then pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies. And so I wanted to come at it from an educated route. And so public health and business just really worked perfectly for me in that aspect.
So it sounds like that you're more interested and passionate about the impact and like maybe looking at this. So when we talk about your internship at Amgen and the representation in clinical trials, because that's something I also have always been thinking about,
Mhm.
is like the research that's done. And correct me if I'm wrong here. I think vast majority of the medical and the pharmaceutical research throughout the globe is actually done in the States, right? From what I understand.
I would actually say the opposite. I know a lot of the times
Okay.
that certain trials and something that we're facing in the US right now is because
Hmm.
sometimes trials can be cheaper in other countries like China or other
Oh,
areas. People are actually having a hard time recruiting patients or participants in the US. And so that's
oh,
something
okay.
that even so within representation in clinical trials, we don't call it clinical research as well. We mainly focus on the different demographics in specific areas of to really quantify and really minimize the different areas that we wanted to target, because you want to make sure that you're doing quality research and you're doing quality actionable items that aren't too broad, that you're trying to attack every single piece of it, because then it just becomes too broad and too hard to kind of manage everything. And so in that case, we were really focusing on certain demographics and different races that really were underrepresented in clinical research. But there is another aspect of that where the US itself is being a little bit more underrepresented in research as well. And so it's important to see how we can actually recruit more patients in the US to participate, because if we're trying to get a drug created in a certain country and we want to market it to that country, it's important that we have participants from that country being a part of the research that's undertaken for that specific drug.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's good. I did not know that. I knew a little bit about this because I'm always thinking about representation in trials, how medications will work on a specific demographic, like women versus children versus Asian women,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah,
that's interesting. So
yeah.
this is the area that you have decided to basically go into, is looking at that aspect of healthcare, which is a lot of time high school students don't even know that exists because
Yeah.
we're traditionally thinking like, oh, be a doctor or be a nurse or be a dentist,
Yeah,
you know?
100%. And I actually didn't even realize it until December, like, of last year, because that's when I was starting to look for internships, and it just happened to pop up on my LinkedIn, and it was really an amazing experience to come by. And so I think that it's really important to kind of learn about the different aspects of healthcare that might not just be doctor. And it's so much more than I expected, and so much more that you can still be a part of. And specifically something for me, I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, but I really want to make sure that my values align with the company that I work for. And so making sure that what I'm doing is aiding towards a cause or a piece of the corporate world that really makes an impact for patients or other things like that was really important to me.
Yeah. That makes me wanna, so what I'm thinking about is going back to when you were in the process of deciding uh, where you wanted to study. So you know you wanted to go into healthcare. What colleges and universities did you apply to initially?
Yeah. So to go into a little bit further back, I kind of decided the colleges that I wanted to apply to based on first where I wanted to be. I knew that I either wanted to stay in Texas or be in a state kind of close, or maybe not that close because I applied to some other ones that weren't that close, but to where I was, just because home meant a lot to me. And then also kind of how it it tied with the certain careers that I was working with or wanting to be a part of and what I thought would be a good fit for me. So one thing for me is I didn't apply to any IBs. It just didn't seem like something that I wanted to be a part of. And I knew because I was top 6% of my class, because I had a 4.0 GPA and things like that, I was able to get into like the state schools as well for Texas. And so I knew that if I didn't apply to as many colleges, that would be all right for me. And I'd made it okay for myself because I knew that I would be completely fine going to UT or A&M for college as well. And I knew that I'd already gotten auto admitted through that because when you're top 6% or top 10% based on public or private school, you get auto admitted to both of those colleges. So based on the majors, but for the most part, you do. And so I only applied to 6 or 7 colleges, I believe, and Rice was always something that I really wanted to be a part of. I remember going into the very first like meet and greet for Rice, and I really just loved the campus. I really enjoyed the culture. There's no sororities or fraternities at Rice, and that really interested me. It just really felt like I connected with it as a person and not just the academics are obviously amazing and great as well, but that was just something that really intrigued me. And so I knew that I wanted to early decision apply for Rice in the very beginning, and then regular decision or early access to other colleges. But I knew that because early decision is a binding contract, that was the one that I had my heart set on as well.
So you did early decision for Rice, and every other one was basically a regular decision.
Yes, there's also this called early access as well, where you can apply early, but it's not a binding contract. But that's further down the process as well.
Oh, got it. Okay, so early decision is the binding process, binding, and then access is just saying that I'm interested.
Early, you're still applying, but it's not a binding contract. For example, if I got into Rice through early decision, then I'd have to go there. I'd have to cancel all my other applications.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, so now let's talk about your journey for the application and getting ready to become an excellent candidate for Rice. What are all the things that you did? Of course, you told us you applied early, and then how did it go from there?
Yeah, so I would say the start of the application process, specifically for early decision, I really thought that the amount of grades or like the type of grades that I received, the GPA that I had, and the different ways, like I had research as well and different job or like internships that really helped aid me towards becoming a vet or becoming someone who was really interested in medicine. But I was more scared of what colleges thought of me. And so I kind of wanted to present this image of this person that I thought that they would want. So really coming heavy first with the grades, or really coming heavy first with, I want to be a veterinarian, or really coming heavy with like the career aspects in itself and not necessarily who I was as a person. And so once I submitted my ED application, I felt pretty confident in what I was going to get as a result of that, just because of what I felt like I had brought to the table. And kind of going more into the story of my application, I ended up actually getting deferred in December for the Rice application. And that kind of changed the way that I saw the process a lot. It made me realize that they didn't necessarily want someone who presented themselves as the shiny, great candidate. They wanted someone who was real and who had an identity, and that's something that I was really missing in my application process.
Wait, before you go further, I have so many questions already.
No problem. Sorry, I talk a little fast.
Yeah. So it sounds like you realized there were some things that you did wrong, for a lack of better term, and you were trying to portray or depict yourself as a person that would be a perfect candidate, to become a veterinarian. So tell me a little bit more about that. What were you doing at that point? Like the things that were making you look like the perfect candidate and were not authentically you.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that I wouldn't necessarily say it was coming from like not an authentic place, because these were things that I had done in the past, but it was more of it coming from like only like a career level mindset from a college perspective than like who I was. So for example, when I interned, I had done previous research at SMU, and so I really came heavy with in my like interest letter. I think it's like you could send an interest letter, or in your supplementals, you can really talk about the different experiences you had. So I really went in a lot more about like the research and the specific aspects of the research that I had done, because I thought it would be really interesting for them to learn about what research that I done or the work experiences that I had, what specific things or what skills that I bring to the table for those, rather than who I was as a person and what interests I had outside of just work and career and grades.
I see. Okay. So basically, we're focused on having those big things on your resume that would stand out on the application.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so now tell me, what does it mean by to get, like, what does deferred mean?
Yeah, so deferred basically means that they have reviewed your application and they think that you're an amazing candidate, but they did at that point did not decide or did not want you to continue the binding contract aspect, and you aren't admitted to the college. You simply have your application be put into the regular decision pool, which basically means that now they will relook at your application as well as with a deferral letter, which you send in, I would say, January, to kind of talk about the different aspects of yourself that you kind of improved on or achieved since you've submitted that application, to then get reviewed during the regular decision pool, and then you get notified if you were accepted or denied in like March with the rest of the regular decision.
Okay. So walk me through this process. So you found out you were deferred in from Rice in December.
Mhm.
How did that go?
I would say it was very difficult for me in December, honestly, till March. It was a lot of waiting game. It really made me change the way that I saw myself in terms of just an applicant in general. It kind of shook my confidence a little, I would say. I did not realize that, I don't know, like I just felt very hopeless in the moment of like what I was going to do, or I really wanted to get there and now I'm not there, and at that moment and what that meant for me. So I would say it really shook my confidence, but it did make me realize what I wanted to present to colleges in the first place and what I really wanted to show them. If they didn't want the shiny applicant, like I would rather them see like the real me and what that meant and how that would be perceived in terms of college applications. It was an experimental process, but it was definitely a difficult moment in my life. Yeah, yeah.
So wait, now you're in December.
Mhm.
You're bummed out. Your your confidence has gone down a little bit.
Yeah.
What about the other colleges? You applied to 6 of them.
Yes. So after that, it's kind of a sucky process in December. You have a couple days so I had previously started writing applications from regular decisions, because regular decision, I believe, is due in January as well, or sometime very close to the time that you get your early decision result versus when you have to start applying for regular decision. And so in that like 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it is, you have to kind of scramble to get all of your common application like essay, and then the rest of this, or maybe you already have that, but your supplementals for each individual college that you now are looking to apply to. And so that was also a long process for me of trying to reel from like not getting into Rice and now having to deal with the 6 or 7 applications to then apply for either regular decision. I think I applied, for regular decision. There's also a second early decision pool that you could be a part of, for different colleges, not Rice, but for different colleges. But I just ultimately decided against that just because I didn't want to bind myself to another college when I still had this hope for Rice and like what that would mean.
Okay, because do you know, I mean, I don't, like, do you know how many people get deferred, or is it usually that those that apply the early binding contract get deferred?
No.
Does Rice straight up say no to some people, or is it usually like they'll
Yeah,
defer them?
so Rice will say like yes, maybe, which is deferred, or no in the early
Okay.
decision process. I don't have any statistics for how many people are deferred versus how many people they just
Okay.
said I'll say no to. I will say though, it depends on the college. Like I know certain colleges will just say deferred and then ultimately you're going to end up getting denied anyway. But some colleges really do take the deferral into account and really take your deferral letter into account and like what that means, for the regular decision pool as well.
I see. So, is there between the time that they say like maybe and and then like later on they can say no or they can say yes, right? That's what deferred means, right? Is there anything that you have to do? Do you have like a reapplication process or?
So
Um,
The only thing that you do is you send a deferral letter to, I believe, whoever your like recruiting counselor is. At like my high school, like there was a recruiting counselor for Rice, and I believe I either sent her the application or I sent it through like Common App or something like that. But you send that, you don't, it's like an optional thing, but you send that to kind of bolster your application as a whole. But the rest of your application, everything that you've written, automatically gets transferred for the regular decision.
Okay, I see. So there's just that one deferral letter.
Yeah.
What's so important about that letter?
I think it's important for a lot of different reasons, but for me specifically, I think it really helps show kind of the aspects of me that I hadn't shown before in the application. So to backtrack a little bit, through that process, because I started to want to participate in more activities that kind of showed who I was or showed the type of person that I wanted to be. I started a lot of different things. I started doing volunteering in areas that really interested in me and not just things that I thought they were going to want to see. And so I volunteered for horseback riding with Equest Therapy, which is a great organization in Texas or Dallas, but basically where we teach cognitively disabled kids how to horseback ride. And that's something that I also do in college now with ice skating because I just enjoyed it so much. Anyway, so from one aspect, doing volunteering opportunities that really meant something to me and really stuck with me in certain ways. Other things were also trying to adhere to different extracurricular activities that really made and fit with my personality and what I wanted to grow and learn more about. So I also started my podcast, which is Hidden Bias, which explores, like we talked about in my introduction as well, but explores implicit and explicit bias across people of varying different levels of careers, personalities, identities, things like that. And it started through research and just wanting to learn more about South Asian and Muslim communities and what that meant in different biases. And from there, it's grown and being expanded. Sorry, I'm talking a lot about this podcast, so let me know if you have any questions or want to stop.
No, I'm actually interested. I was going to ask you a little bit more about the podcast itself. So you started the podcast like after the application was deferred, or like was it part of your senior year, or?
So it was actually part of a research project that I had done before the deferral process, and I didn't really take it like bring it into the application process. It was just something that I'd done because I was interested in it, not because I thought that colleges would want me to really look at it. And so from there, I started to build upon it. And because I knew that I wanted to come out with in my deferral letter different areas or things that I was really committed to doing and wanted to show how I had grown it or how I had expanded on it. That was something, or a podcast was something that had kind of just came out of an idea and was something that was really interesting to learn about and see how I could be a part of. And so, yeah, that's where the podcast came from.
Okay, I see. And you talked about that in your deferral letter?
Yes. Yeah. And
I'm very curious, like, what is this deferral letter? Like, what do you put in the deferral letter? Who writes it?
Yeah, so you write it, or I wrote it as like a student, and it's a one pager on the different ways that you have kind of grown as a person or done different achievements since your actual deadline process. So the deadline for the early decision was November, till like March or till wherever like you are in the regular decision pool. And so it was just a way for me. The whole letter itself was just a way for me to connect to the college itself and kind of not as much because the supplementals really ask like, why do you want to be a part of Rice, or what are the different aspects of Rice that you're excited about? But the deferral letter to me was something where I could really showcase myself and the different areas that I was interested in and what I really wanted to be as a person and an individual human being. And so it was a fun letter for me because I got to really let go of what I had expected colleges wanted from me and instead just be myself.
Okay, so you very clearly articulated that in your letter.
Yeah.
And so do you think it was a deferral letter that helped you?
I personally think it was. I think that it really helped them kind of see a different aspect of me that is not just my grades and my GPA. And I think that's so important for so many people because I think it can come across or as colleges just want to see your GPA and just want to see your grades because that's something that shows that you're a hard worker, that you are really smart, and that is something that all colleges want. But once everyone has that, and once a lot of people have that same baseline, it's really important to show what makes you different and what makes you unique against all of those other applicants. And so to me, or at least I believe that by doing that for my deferral letter, it really helped them see why I was unique and what made me so strong in terms of an applicant or what I could bring to the table for Rice. And so, for example, like even with Hidden Bias now, I host a podcast with different professors and students at Rice, but I also host it on air with a college radio station called KTRU, which is something that's really cool and something I never would have gotten to experience if I hadn't gone to Rice and hadn't been able to bring this podcast here in the first place.
So tell me a little bit more about your podcast. What was your motivation for the first episode?
Yeah. So the first episode, I think, was really all about the research that I kind of explained before. It really, I think that first episode was like, sometimes I'll hear it back and I'll hear like my little high school stuff and it's funny, but I really wanted to dive into the different biases that South Asian and Muslim women specifically faced in different communities and how they were impacted by that. And so I think the first person that I interviewed was my mom, and then I moved into other people or family friends that I was really close with that I felt like I could create a connection with through this like Zoom call or through just like podcasting and interviewing in general. And that was my very first experience with public speaking and being able to connect with an individual, and it made me realize I really enjoyed that, and that was something that I wanted to stick with, not just because of college or college applications, but just because I genuinely enjoyed it. And so I continued to do that, and I realized that there were a lot of different voices out there that were really important for me to kind of want to spotlight and want to be heard. And so it really expanded from just learning and listening to South Asian Muslim women to people of all identities and all races. And it really helped me broaden my journeys and expansiveness with different identities. And it was just a really great experience to bring it to every single aspect, from college and learning about professors to every internship that I've done. I've been able to connect with someone and learn more about their experiences, and it's been a great way to do that.
Nice. I'm happy that you covered a very specific topic, because there are so many people that would want to hear this type of a conversation that's very specific to like the hidden biases that we have.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like there's a little bit of a what they call a microaggression towards specific groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
When people will say something, like even when somebody says to you like, "Oh, your English is so good." They don't sometimes realize what they're saying, or
Yeah.
it's
100%.
interesting. I used to be a diversity educator, so there were so many things that I actually learned. And when we were learning to become diversity educators, we
Mhm.
all learned about our own hidden biases that we have,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. So it's pretty neat. It's a pretty unique
Yeah.
topic, and it's a good thing. So you're still doing that. You're
Yes.
still podcasting.
Yes,
I think you have a podcast. You have an episode coming out soon.
Yes, I actually had an episode come out this morning, and that was my
okay.
23rd episode. And so it's really been great to feel. First, the reason why I wanted this podcast in the first place was to just, like you said, like make even if it's just one person, aware of the biases that they face, and how they can relate to other people on it, or realize that they may have a bias that they didn't initially know before. And so it's been really great to continue that, and really great to learn more about different people and the different ways that bias has impacted them. I'm also looking for in the future to learn more about the ways that bias affects our world in general. And so in the future, I have a couple people coming on to learn more about device design and how that's impacted in certain biases as well. And so it'll be a great way to kind of continue to expand on this idea of bias and what it means for so many different people.
Okay. Now, I want to go back a little bit more, you went to Green Hill.
Yes.
Okay. That's a private school.
Yes.
Okay. How was that something? Did you always go to private school, like from kindergarten, or
Yes. So I went to leadership prep school from kindergarten to first, and I'm sorry if you can hear the helicopter outside, but I went to I went to Legacy Chris leadership prep school. Sorry, from kindergarten to third grade. I think it was a charter school, so it wasn't necessarily a public school, but it was a kind of blend of, for some reason, a church and a really well-to-do school as well. And then I went to Green Hill private school from fourth grade till senior year. And yeah.
Okay, from fourth grade, you said.
Yes. Mhm.
Oh, okay. So you've pretty much been in Green Hill from, okay, got it. I thought it was very specifically like high school.
No, it was, yeah, because fourth grade was also like elementary or lower school. So it's kind of like I've been in the private school area from like lower school till upper school is what we called it, but high school.
Got it. Okay. And then when did you know that you know, wanted to go? Because you said you knew pretty early that you wanted to go to Rice, and you know, like how early were you already thinking about college?
I would say junior year.
Okay.
I feel like I wasn't really like thinking about the college process other than like what internships that I wanted for the summer. Like for freshman year summer, we had COVID, and so I wasn't really thinking about that. And then sophomore year, I started more thinking about what types of jobs that I wanted to go into or the different
Mhm.
ways that I wanted to interact with internships in the first place. And so that was more of my aspect of thinking about college at the time, both freshman, sophomore years. And then junior year, once I was starting to take the SAT and the ACT, that really started to spur kind of where I was thinking about going to college. We have college counselors at Green Hill as well. And so they also helped start the conversation and helped me start to think about what different ways or different colleges that I wanted to be a part of. They were a really big part of the process, I would say, and really helpful in that aspect of kind of narrowing down the different areas or different colleges that I wanted to focus on and helping me come up with plans for that.
What are some of the things that you started doing early? And I mean, you can also talk about like, you know, some things that you wish you did, I guess. Because I always want to know, what did you do and what did you miss out on that you, if you were to go back and if you were to do it, you know, if you were to have a second chance at it, how would you change that approach? Mostly because a lot of our students are going to listen to this and they want to know, because some of them are in ninth grade, some are 10th, you know, 11th. So what advice would you have for them? Like, what should they be doing? And
Yeah.
so many of the students are interested in going to Rice. So, you know, your advice is very important.
Yeah, 100%. The first thing that comes to mind in that aspect is I remember like when I was a freshman and sophomore, I don't know if it was like the vibe at the time or like if it's still a vibe now, but I was just very scared of coming across as too much or doing too much in general or doing something that other people perceived as weird or not you or like different than what the regular status quo is. So when I was thinking about opportunities, I was always like in the back of my mind thinking, okay, like what looks kind of cool or what looks interesting, not interesting, but like what kind of blends in with everybody else rather than trying to be my unique self and being my authentic self, specifically freshman and sophomore year. And I would say that that's something that I really do regret in some instances. I wish that I was better at wanting to kind of display who I was overall and be my own unique person in high school. I think I've done a better job of it now. And especially in college, there's not as many cliques or different aspects of college where you feel boxed in to do a certain thing. It's easier for you to branch out, for you to be a different and unique person. And so in high school, I would like tell my high school self that exactly same thing of not being afraid of doing a podcast at freshman year or doing some research that you think is interesting or doing a volunteer opportunity that you think is cool just because you think it's cool and not because anyone else said something to you about it, or starting something new because you think that it's fun or that it's interesting. I think that's something that I would tell my freshman or sophomore year self. And I think that's something really important for students also thinking about college applications or not thinking about college applications right now. Because honestly, like as a freshman, I wouldn't expect myself to really start thinking about, okay, I really, really want to go to Rice. And if
Mhm.
people do, that's really amazing. But it's also about what you want to do with your life. And so, although picking a college is a really great thing to do, it's also making sure that your personality fits in with what you think you want to go into. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to it's really difficult to process all that. Like you're not just in high school and you're not just working towards, you know, your career. You're also growing up. You're a human being. You have a family. You have friends. You have, you know, a lot of things are happening, right? So it's not necessarily easy. Um, But I really did like the fact that you said that, you wished you did something like that. What do you think was holding you back?
I mean, I think I was honestly just a little scared of being different or being a little bit like against everyone else. Not in like the sense of like I'm doing actively something that's like bad or whatever, but I
Mhm.
think just feeling different than everyone else really scared me initially. It made me put these boundaries on myself that I feel like I shouldn't have had in the first place. And so, yeah, I would say that it was mainly fear internally that kind of stopped me from doing these things more than encouragement from elsewhere. Because I had a lot of people, even my parents would tell me, like, okay, I think you should do this, or this could be a really cool opportunity. But there were just a lot of boundaries that I'd put myself in
Mhm.
freshman and sophomore year that made me not want to do those things. And when I'd gotten the deferral application or the deferral letter or deferral result in the
Yeah.
first place, it made me realize that I needed to start doing things that were unique and that were me because that was really the most important thing, and it kind of helped me shed those boundaries.
Yeah, I think everybody has, it's unique. It's everyone moves at their own pace. So that's for sure. With and that's the goal that we have at MyTrex is that moment where a student feels like that, I don't know if I should do this or if I should not do this.
Mhm,
So when we focus on helping the students understand their own unique strengths and their own unique formula,
mhm,
and we talk to them about how their brain works, right? So
yeah,
this is the kind of conversation we would have with someone that's in ninth grade. We'll say like, oh, what's something that you've always wanted to do? And they'll say like, I've always wanted to do this, and then we go into what their strengths are and how they can actually execute that. So if they wanted to have a podcast, we'll
mhm,
guide them. We'll talk about, hey, these are your very specific strengths, and how this is how you can do something, go from A to Z, because it helps you kind of build those mental blocks that are small enough for you to start working your way towards a bigger plan.
uh-huh,
So that's I mean, that's actually my goal, right? That's what I'm trying to do with my program, is to help students understand their strengths and then help them get clarity and build that confidence so they don't hold themselves back. Because vast majority of the time, it is us that are holding ourselves back from doing something, right?
yeah,
And even today, like, you're talking about in ninth grade, I'm here as an adult, and sometimes I hold myself back from like, doing something, like it took me a while to start my own podcast,
mhm,
right?
yeah,
So it takes a lot to get to it. And I did it after I actually discovered what my strengths were. And when somebody like told me like, hey, you should really do this. This is an area that you're going to thrive in. These are your strengths. So I want to be able to do that for students just like you, so that
yeah,
you can see what your potential is and knowing what your strengths are. Because I sincerely believe, Nuha, that when you know your strengths, you know that this is the area that you're going to be good at. And then you also know the areas that you're probably not going to be that great at, right? Because let's
yeah,
be honest, we all don't have everything.
yep,
We have some stuff, and then, that makes us uniquely who we are. So I am really excited. And I want you to take the Clifton Strengths Finder and go through the MyTrex program so you can see, and I'll work on a coaching session with you to see how you can apply that, because it's not just about preparing for college. Like it applies everywhere in your life. It gives you clarity, it gives you confidence, and I think you'll definitely enjoy that as well.
100%.
Now,
Oh, I did want to say one quick thing as
yeah.
well. I think that like it's so important. Like I think the word passion is like such an important thing to also kind of dissect a little bit and understand, because when I was a freshman in high school, I was always worried because I felt like I didn't have a passion. Like I wanted to be a veterinarian, but that was just something that I'd always said to myself. And I didn't really expand on the different strengths and or weaknesses that I had towards
Mhm.
what that could mean. And so just being able to learn more about that starting from freshman year, I think is really important. And that word passion, like coming back to it, something I like these things like podcasting or volunteering at like these other things that I do that I'm so like actually passionate about. I didn't even realize I was passionate about until I just realized how much I love doing them. And so I think that's a really important and great thing to say as well.
Yeah, and it's so like I think that kids, children, Gen Z is so smart these days because they're using the word passion.
Mhm.
When I talk to students, they're like, I really want to do what I'm passionate about. I want to figure out what my passion is. When I was in high school, passion was a fruit. Like we didn't really we didn't really go into what's your passion.
Yeah.
It was more like, how do I get a good job that will pay my bills, right?
Mhm.
So with your generation, that's the really unique thing that you guys come with, is that you want to do things that you actually will wake up and enjoy doing every single day
Yep.
because you feel connected to it. Your ikigai. So this is again part of what my Trex is, because
Yeah.
I learned from students just like you that say like, well, I don't want to just another job. I want to do something that's going to have an impact in the world, that the
Mhm.
world needs, that I enjoy doing, that I'm good at. So that's exactly what the what the formula that we work on here.
Wow.
And it works. And it
Yeah.
works because honestly, when you do what you're good at and you're passionate about, you do a really good job at it. And that's what makes it work. So
100%. And I love the mention of ikigai. Like we had to do that in one of my business classes as well. And so it's a
oh,
great way to really find the different intersection between like mission, passion, service.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we start doing that very early with the students, because
Yeah.
a lot of students actually know what they're passionate about, or at least what their values are.
Mhm.
So many students are like, well, you know what? I really want to make sure that our planet is in a healthy, space, like, because as we're growing, we're destroying it. So, I really want to work towards that, or I want to really help people get education. Like, a lot of the students that I talk to, they know what they want to do, what kind
Mhm.
of impact they want to make. So it's all about connecting them to the right opportunities. And then also, if somebody's really interested in, quote unquote, saving the planet and in the green energy, then they probably are not going to enjoy working for a company that's selling potato chips in
Joyful.
plastic bags, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like the opposite. So
Yeah.
that's what we try to do, is we try to help them figure out the different areas, the different internships, and where
Yeah.
they can go with that. But before, I think we're almost out of
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to know if you had some some advice for the students um, that are going to be applying for college basically in the next couple of weeks, right? Because early decision is some of the early decision applications have already closed actually, but early decision is coming up.
Yeah.
And then for the students that are going to be applying next year,
Mhm.
if you were able to give the seniors and the juniors any words of advice, what would that be?
I would say, and I don't want to sound like too cheesy or whatever, but like I would say like don't be afraid to be yourself. I would say being you is not going to be too much for college applications, and it's not going to be something that you feel like you should hide. And I think that being you is the most important piece of your college application, whatever that has to be. And I would also say like passion can also be daunting in the aspect that if you feel like you don't like connect to one thing or another, it can be hard to be like, okay, like this is what I'm really drawn to. So being afraid to explore different avenues that maybe make you uncomfortable or make you comfortable is something that, especially for people who are thinking about college next year, I would say is really important. I would say making sure that you try new things and try being authentic to yourself are the most important pieces of advice that I can give anyone. Even if it's
Okay.
hard, I think being uncomfortable is really important. Uncomfortable is important.
I've never asked this to a student. What about some advice for parents?
I would say letting your student, or not your student, your child guide the conversation. I think for me, I was really grateful to have parents who were really game for whatever I wanted to do in terms of the college application process and really left it up to me to where I wanted to apply and what I wanted to do with my life. And I think that that was so important in helping me find my authentic self and what passions kind of led me to where I am today. I think when you become like stagnant on what you want your child to be in terms of you want them to get into Ivy so you can say, oh, my child got into Harvard or Cornell or whatever it is, I think it becomes really constricting for the child itself and for them to feel like it's okay to have different interests and different aspects of themselves that they want to explore that may not be a part of an Ivy, or it may be a part of an Ivy, but just think things like that. I would say for the parent is letting your kids guide their decision making, because at the end of the day, it's their life and they're going to be living it, and you want to make sure that they're happy doing it.
Yeah, and they need to make their own decisions because that's really important.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like if our parents are deciding everything for us, we don't have a good understanding of what kind of a decision maker we are as individuals, and that can be like that's not the kind of life that you want to live. You want to be able to make your own decisions, and even if you make a mistake, it's a mistake that you learn from.
Mhm.
If I always feel if a parent is really wanting their kid to go to a specific school, and the student doesn't want to go to that school, I don't know how happy they will be and how they will perform, if they didn't want to, if it's not their decision. Because if it's not your decision, you just feel like I'm just here,
Yeah.
right? You don't feel it. But if it's your decision, you go in with confidence, you go in with clarity, you own every single thing for the rest of your journey. And that also makes it really easy for the parent, because at the end of the day, us as parents want our students to make their own independent decisions,
Mhm.
so they can be, leaders for the society, right? And lead a good life for themselves. So
Yeah. And I would also say colleges can see that as well. Like if someone's not, if someone's just doing something to please their parents or to go into an application that their parents want more than them, college is going to see that in your supplementals. They're going to see that in your common application and overall. And so it's just, it, at the end of the day, it doesn't make any like actual sense for you. Or, I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for people to just do something based on what other people think that they should do rather than what they really want to do with their life. So, yeah.
okay, well, we're out of time. Is there anything else you want to add before we close the day?
I think that's all. First of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated getting to talk a little bit more about my application process and a little bit about what I do now. And I really appreciated the chance to get to speak on it and have the opportunity to help hopefully some other students as well.
Yeah, thank you, Nuha. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. You're in college right now, so it takes a lot. So thank you so much for that. And I wish you all the best ahead, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye.